Today we're going to learn about completing the square. Completing the square is basically another way to solve a factoring problem. So here are the steps. We're going to put the variables on one side and the numbers on the other side. We're going to take the b term and we're going to cut it in half and square it. We're going to take this and add it to both sides and factor and solve. And I know this doesn't make sense yet. It will once you work them out. The directions though for the first problems are going to say find the value of c that makes a perfect square trinomial. So you're only going to do step 2 from above on this one. So only do step 2 whenever it says something like find the value of c. So basically we're going to take our b, cut it in half and square it, and that's all we're going to do. The b term, if you remember, is always the number that is by the x or the letter with a 1 coefficient or 1 exponent. So 12 is my b, so if I take b and I cut it in half, I end up dividing that and I get 6, and then I'm going to square it, which gives me 36. So my answer for c is 36. And we're not doing the whole process, we're just doing the step 2. Number 2, our b term is a -7. So what makes this a little bit harder is the fact that 7 is not even, so when we go to cut it in half, it's not going to go in. But don't worry, don't do fraction, no decimals. So just leave it, since it doesn't reduce, leave it and go straight to the next step, which is squaring. When you square it, you're basically writing the same thing and you're doing it twice. So even with the fraction, so -7 times -7, if we go straight across, is a 49. And 2 times 2 is 4. So our c is 49 over 4. And again, don't worry that it's not a nice number. It'll work out fine. So that's the first part. The second part on the examples that you guys are going to work out on homework, the directions are a little bit different. It says to solve by completing the square. So we are going to go through the entire process. So first thing is making sure the variables are on one side. So if I look, the letters are all on the left, the numbers are on the right. So this one is, step 1 is already done. But if you look at number 4, you have letters and numbers on the same side. This is missing something. This should be equal 0. And so this one we'll need to do a little work on. But let's go back here. So step 1's done. So step 2, the b term. Again, b is the term that's by the letter that's not squared, so -2. So you're going to take -2 and you're going to cut it in half, which is going to give you a 2. So -2 divided by 2 is -1, and then we're going to square that. When you square a negative, it should always end up positive. So that is step 2. Step 3 says add it to both sides. So you're basically going to take this number and add it to the back of each side of the equation. So we will rewrite this r squared minus 2r, and then we're going to put a +1, and then a 15 plus 1. Now, the right side is fairly easy. 15 and 1 is just 16. This side's a little tricky, but it is going to end up being 2 parentheses, and the number that you have in the parentheses before you squared it, so this number right here, so you'll want to write this step down. Don't skip this. This number will come down and go to the back of the parentheses. So you'll end up having, I almost wrote an X, r minus 1 and r minus 1. It'll be like that every single time. So you just want to kind of get into this pattern. Since we have 2 r minus 1s, we can rewrite it as r minus 1 squared. So we'll put our little 2 exponent equals 16. And then before spring break, we learned that we can solve anything with the squared by taking a square root or a radical to both sides. When you take a radical to something that's a number, you want to make sure to include a plus and minus on it. So there should be 2 answers. What the radical and the squared do is they basically cancel each other out. So this 2 and this radical will cancel, and whatever's underneath will just drop down. So I will have this r minus 1 here. There will be no parentheses, there'll be no squared, and then the square root of 16 is 4, but I have got a plus and minus, so it's going to be a plus and minus 4. So 2 answers are sitting here, and then I will add my 1 over like normal, and this looks really weird, but the way you're going to solve it is you're going to write it as 2 different problems. So you have 2 different types of 4 here. You have a positive 4 and a negative 4, and then you're adding 1 to that positive 4 and negative 4. So add 1, and this will give us our 2 solutions. So 4 plus 1 is going to give me a 5. Negative 4 plus 1 is going to give me a negative 3. So my answers for R is going to be 5 and negative 3. And now we're done. So we're going to repeat that process on another problem. Pretty much all your homework problems should be this similar steps, so make sure you practice it because they will get a little bit tougher the second day we do them. So if we go back over to number 4 here, we first need it to be in the right form, which is that the letters need to be on one side, and then this has to be on the other side. So we're going to subtract 56 to both sides. You always want it to start this way. You don't want to have everything equal to 0. And now step 2 says take your B term. So here is my B term. You're going to cut it in half. So 18, cut it in half. That goes in evenly. That's going to be a 9. And then you're going to square that. And that's going to give you an 81. This number will then get added to both sides of the equation like we did before. So this 81 is going to go here and it's going to go here. So it's going to look like k squared plus 18k plus 81 equals a negative 56 plus 81. The right side is going to give us a 25, and just put that into your calculator. The left side, you're going to write 2 sets of parentheses. The number that was here before you squared it, this number, and make sure you take its sign, goes down. So that's a positive 9. So I'm going to have a k with a positive 9 and a k with a positive 9. We have it twice. So if we have it twice, we're going to write it with a squared. Then to get rid of the squared, we're going to square root both sides, making sure to do a plus and minus on the right side because we should be getting 2 answers. Remember that this 2 and the square root cancel, so just this k plus 9 will drop down. So you'll have a k plus 9, and then you're going to have 2 answers, a plus and a minus. Square root of 5, again, put that in your calculator, is just 5. And then we are going to subtract 9 to both sides. So then here again is where you want to split. You have 2 different types of 5s. So you have a positive 5 and a negative 5. And for both those 5s, they're getting subtracted by 9. So for the first answer, negative 9 is bigger than 5. So it'll be a negative 4. Same sign, so we add, so a negative 14. So our answers for k will be a negative 4 and a negative 14. And that's how you complete the square.